Whispers Around the World, a Heal Our World book from SufferingWell. Chapter 8, Whispers Around the World. Mary Ellen set up her easel in the shade of an ancient oak tree, the late morning sun casting a luminescent glow across the quaint town square. She had been traveling for nearly 2 months, painting her way through small towns, one charming scene at a time. Today her canvas held the outline of a cobblestone street, flower boxes overflowing with vibrant blooms in the background, and a deep blue sky just beginning to take form. She dipped her brush into a soft blue, humming a favorite hymn under her breath as she painted. People passed by, some stopping to admire her work, others simply glancing over with a smile. She loved these moments, the quiet of creation mingling with the sounds of the world around her. It was as if God himself were painting alongside her, filling her heart with peace. A young woman with a stroller paused nearby, her eyes drawn to the painting. "That's beautiful," she said, a hint of sadness in her voice. "You must be really talented." Mary Ellen smiled, turning to her with an affable nod. "Thank you. I feel blessed to be able to share a little beauty with the world. Painting helps me see the wonder in God's creation." The woman looked down, absently rocking the stroller. "I used to draw a little," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Before life got complicated." Mary Ellen's heart went out to her. She could sense the weight of something unspoken, a burden the young woman carried alone. Setting her brush down, she took a step closer. "Life has a way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it?" she said, reassuringly. "I've had my fair share of aches and pains, inside and out. Recently, though, I stumbled across something that's been helping me see those difficulties in a new light." The young woman looked up, her curiosity piqued. "Oh, what's that?" Mary Ellen took a small notepad from her bag. "I'm learning about offering up my pain and struggles to God, asking him to use the grace for others who need it. It's like turning something painful into something beautiful." She wrote down the name of a YouTube channel on a piece of paper. The woman took the paper, her fingers trembling slightly. "Thank you. I think I might give it a look. I feel like I've been carrying so much alone." Mary Ellen reached out, giving her hand a caring squeeze. "None of us are meant to carry it alone. And remember, God sees you. He knows every tear you shed, every ache you feel. You're not alone, my dear." The young woman nodded, her eyes misting over. She glanced back at the stroller and gave Mary Ellen a faint smile. "Thank you," she whispered, and with that she continued on her way, holding the paper as if it were a lifeline. Mary Ellen watched her go, a soft prayer on her lips. She loved these moments when a simple conversation could plant a seed of hope. Turning back to her canvas, she picked up her brush again, adding soft details to the sky, the colors coming alive under her hands. She'd found such joy in offering her work and her words to God, praying that he'd use them to touch the lives of others. Later that day, as she packed up her supplies, an older gentleman approached, leaning on a cane. His face was lined with years of experience, and his eyes held a glint of humor despite his obvious discomfort. "You're making that look far too easy," he said, nodding toward her nearly finished painting. Mary Ellen laughed, wiping her hands on a cloth. "It only looks easy because I've been doing it for so long. Art has a way of making time fly by." He shook his head, looking thoughtful. "I'd love to have a hobby like that, something to take my mind off the pain, you know?" She tilted her head, sensing an opportunity. "Pain, you say? I know a bit about that myself. I've had my share of aches, especially these last few years, but I've been learning how to give it to God in a way I never knew before." The man raised an eyebrow. "Give it to God? I always thought suffering was just something we had to bear." Mary Ellen nodded, tucking a strand of silver hair behind her ear. I used to think so too, but recently I started learning about offering my suffering up, asking God to use it for good in someone else's life. It's a bit like prayer, but with the pain you're feeling, it turns something heavy into something meaningful. He looked intrigued, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. I never thought of it that way. You're saying my pain could help someone else. Exactly, she said, her eyes bright. It's like a gift. When we give our suffering to God, He can use it to help others who are hurting. I've started offering up my own aches and pains, and it's given me a sense of purpose I never had before. Imagine, something I thought was a waste is actually very powerful. I have wealth I never realized, she laughed. The man nodded slowly, a faint smile breaking through. Well, that's something worth thinking about. You know, I always thought I'd be alone in this pain, but maybe I don't have to be. Mary Ellen reached into her bag, offering him a small card with a YouTube channel's name painted on it. She had begun to see this as a ministry since so many people were in pain, and she could help point them in a good direction. Give it a try. It might bring you some peace. And if you ever feel like talking more, you know where to find me. I'll be painting right here all week, and I'm thinking of spending a few months in the area. He took the card, tucking it carefully into his pocket. Thank you, young lady. I appreciate that. As he walked away, Mary Ellen felt a swell of gratitude rise within her. She rinsed her brushes and packed up her paints, her heart light with joy. She whispered a prayer of thanks, lifting up the man and then the young woman she'd spoken to earlier, hoping that the words she'd shared would bring them closer to God's love. She'd found her calling, not only in painting, but in sharing what she'd learned with others. Every conversation, every little moment spent listening and offering kindness felt like a brushstroke on the canvas of God's plan. And with each encounter, she knew her journey of faith and compassion had only just begun. The view was spectacular, framed by rolling hills dotted with ancient castles. Mary Ellen carefully blended shades of blue and green, capturing the tranquil beauty of the Rhine as it flowed steadily past her easel. She sighed contentedly, losing herself in the scene, her brushstrokes flowing as easily as the river itself. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the older couple standing nearby until the woman spoke, her voice rich with curiosity. That's beautiful. You really captured the light on the water. Mary Ellen looked up, smiling as she took in the couple. They both wore the telltale lanyards of cruise tourists, and the woman's expression was one of genuine admiration. Thank you. It's such a breathtaking view here. It feels like painting paradise, Mary Ellen replied. Are you two enjoying the cruise? The man nodded, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Absolutely. I've been wanting to take this Rhine cruise for years, and it's been everything we hoped it would be. I'm Fred, by the way, and this is my wife, Rhonda. Lovely to meet you both. I'm Mary Ellen, she said, offering her hand. I've been traveling and painting for a while now. It's a dream come true to be here. Rhonda took a step closer, glancing at the nearly finished painting. You're very talented, Mary Ellen. Have you been painting your whole life? Mary Ellen nodded, brushing a bit of hair behind her ear. Yes, though it was mostly a hobby until I retired. I used to teach, so I'd paint on weekends or during school breaks. Now I can do it all day, every day. Feels like a blessing. Rhonda chuckled. Isn't it wonderful to finally have the time to do what you love? We've been retired a few years now, and this is our 5th cruise. She turned to Fred, smiling. We're determined to see the world. Mary Ellen tilted her head, curious. You two seem like a fun pair. Do you mind if I ask what brought you to this particular cruise? Fred's face softened, and he exchanged a quick glance with Rhonda. Well, we love to travel, of course, but it's also an opportunity to reflect and be grateful for God's blessings. There's something about the beauty of the world that brings us closer to Him, don't you think? Mary Ellen's eyes lit up. Oh, I couldn't agree more. You're Christians, too? Rhonda laughed, nodding, yes. Isn't it funny how you can recognize a kindred spirit? I had a feeling about you. Mary Ellen grinned, her heart beaming with delight. Well, how about that? What a wonderful surprise to meet fellow believers here in the heart of Germany. Fred gestured to a nearby cafe, his expression hopeful. Would you like to join us for lunch, Mary Ellen? It would be lovely to hear more about your travels, and I have a feeling we'll have much to discuss. I'd love that, Mary Ellen replied, packing up her brushes and carefully storing her canvas. They strolled to the cafe together, choosing a table with a view of the river. Over bowls of hearty soup and fresh bread, they began to share their stories. Rhonda leaned in, her eyes bright with interest. So, Mary Ellen, how did you end up traveling and painting? It sounds like a beautiful life. It is, Mary Ellen agreed, smiling. But what's made it even more meaningful lately is something I found by accident, the idea of using my pain for God. Fred and Rhonda nodded their heads, listening intently. Yes, we've heard of it, Fred mentioned enthusiastically. My mother used to always tell me to offer it up. But to be honest, I don't think it's something either of us is in the habit of doing. He looked questioningly at Rhonda, who shook her head. Mary Ellen continued, her voice soft with awe. It's about offering up our suffering to God, uniting it to Jesus on the cross, and letting God use it to help others. It's a concept I'd never really thought about before, but it's been life-changing. I've started praying differently, seeing my aches and pains as opportunities to bless others. So instead of a limitation, my pain is an opportunity for grace. Rhonda's eyes widened. You mean you can use your suffering to help other people? Mary Ellen nodded. Exactly. It's a way of giving, even when you feel limited, and it turns suffering into something beautiful, something with a purpose. The people I've been hearing about this from are in the States. They have started an initiative called HOW, H-O-W, Heal Our World, where they encourage people to choose a country and pray for it. And we're encouraged to offer up our suffering for the country as well. Fred sat back, looking thoughtful. That's powerful. I can see how that would give meaning to struggles, big or small. Do they have groups you can join? They do, Mary Ellen replied enthusiastically. I'm in a group myself. If you're interested, I can give you their email. They'll help you find a group, or you could even join the one I'm in. There are groups that meet in person, but the one I'm in is all on Zoom, so you could connect no matter where you are. Rhonda smiled, a spark of excitement in her eyes. We'd love that. I feel like God led us here today, right to this conversation. Mary Ellen felt a deep joy as she wrote down the SufferingWell email for them, silently thanking God for this divine encounter. Back in the U.S., Beth Ann was sitting at her desk one afternoon, flipping through maintenance requests when she overheard a soft-spoken conversation outside her office door. Curious, she peered out to see Mrs. Martinez, one of the younger residents. She had moved there right after turning 55, speaking with her teenage granddaughter in a hurried, hushed tone. The girl looked worried, clutching a worn grocery list in one hand. Beth Ann stepped out, greeting them with a smile. Hello, Mrs. Martinez. Is everything all right? Mrs. Martinez looked up, surprised and embarrassment crossing her face. Oh, hi, Beth Ann. We're just heading to the store. Things have been a bit tight this month is all. Beth Ann felt the now familiar nudge in her heart. She'd been hearing stories about the family's financial struggles and knew what she needed to do. She reached into her bag, pulling out a grocery gift card she'd purchased on sale, thinking she'd use it for herself to stretch her dollars. Now it had a much better purpose. Take this. Bethan said, handing the card to Mrs. Martinez. "It's enough to cover a good amount of groceries." The woman's eyes filled with tears as she took the card, her hands trembling. "Bethan, I don't know what to say. This is too much." "It's just the right amount," Bethan replied, with a reassuring smile. "God's blessed me with more than I need, so I'm glad to help out when I can. Enjoy a nice meal with your family tonight." Mrs. Martinez hugged her, whispering a heartfelt thank you, and Bethan watched them go, her heart swelling with joy. It felt right to be a part of something greater than herself, and she knew she'd been given everything she had for a purpose far beyond what she'd imagined.